Hello and welcome to Just Chillin'. I believe this is episode 4. I'm your host, Sean. Please take this more seriously, Hoffman. And with me, as always, is Andy Paper Itinerary Bell, good friend of mine, extraordinaire, fantastic guy. How you doing, buddy?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm better now. You know, I
Now
love I
you see
love it
my
when
paper.
yeah. I'm happy that it's back. You know, just making its debut, its public debut. I mean, I've seen it before, and the others from London have seen it, but I'm happy that it's here with us, like always.
What can I say? I live a hard and fast life, and if I don't have a good notepad and pen next to me, I feel naked.
I thought you typed them up. I didn't think you handwrote. I thought you typed them up and printed them out.
No, no, that was Star Wars Celebration.
Well, that's what I'm referring to. I'm digging
No,
up that
I
that deep cut.
in fairness, I used Control V on that. I just basically took the itinerary and thought, am I going to get coverage in the? Is the app going to work in the convention? Am I going to get coverage on my cell phone? Hey, I'll just cut and paste the itinerary onto uh, and print it off. So no, I didn't type it by hand. I just used the good old Control C, Control V function of most modern uh, keyboards today.
But what's new, buddy? I know there's some stuff you wanted to talk about at the front, so I'd love to hear it.
Excitingly, we've got our first correction from last week's app. We've got our first correction whereby this tired old fart last week got his brain mixed up over Alien. So Alien Romulus, which was we talked about last week in some depth, that's actually going to be released in the theaters and not released on Disney Plus because I got mixed up with a parallel development going on at the moment, which is actually a TV series, a prequel to the Alien franchise, which is also being developed at the same time that the Alien Romulus movie, again destined for theaters, is being developed as well. So my apologies for that. It didn't take very long at all for a very good friend of ours to say, "Hey, you're wrong there," um, and I apologize profusely, and I'm apologizing to you guys now. The second thing was the same friend pointed out to me that when we talked about news last week, we didn't cover perhaps some of the news going on at the moment in terms of Gina Carano and her alleged court case with Disney and taking them to court. I made the point clear to that person that asked me. You know, it was a very innocent question as to why we didn't cover it in news, and I'll share my response to everyone that's listening as to why we're not. We like to think that Just Chilling is a positive podcast, and we're going to try our hardest to only talk about positivity and the stuff that we like, and try not to spend too much time on perhaps some of the negative things that are happening out there, especially when it comes down to fandom reactions. Sorry, the reactions within fandom. And so, therefore, there are other people more qualified and perhaps more equipped, and certainly better podcasts than us that can address that. And so, um, we stand by positivity, but most importantly, inclusion and diversity on this podcast. And if you want to know of a podcast that perhaps provided, as far as I know at the moment, the most comprehensive and perhaps unbiased and pragmatic, for the most part, view on the situation with Gina Carano and her case towards Disney, I really implore everyone to to listen to the Sith Lift, not this week's episode that's just landed, but last week's. And I think Eric, Iraj, and the guys do an amazing job of seeing both sides of the story and really the pragmatic view that most corporations take when it comes down to employees of theirs and the way that they behave in public. So that's all I really want to say about that. But I wanted to address the reason why we as a team didn't want to talk about it last week. And then lastly, I just want to give an apology to you, my friend Sean, but also to the listeners last week, on re-listening to last week's episode, just to sanity check that I knew what we were talking about. I noticed that seemed extremely tired, and I was somewhat rambling last week. And Sean, you already know what's been going on in my life over the last couple of weeks, but I thought it prudent to explain to everyone listening to the pod that we've had perhaps a couple of tougher weeks than I've actually been open and honest about on the pod. In that a very much loved member of our family is currently in hospital and has been in intensive care or ICU for the last 2 weeks, and that person is very, very close to us and very important to us. And both Lucy and I have been spending an awful lot of time between home and the hospital, and managing the rest of the extended family. And so perhaps while I was insistent that I joined last week's pod, because for me it was a great break from reality and just talk about nothing. It was great for my own well-being. Perhaps I probably should have skipped that week, in that I myself identified that I somewhat rambled for the sake of just talking last week, and I promised to do a better job. And Sean, you've been awesome with this, but I wanted to get that off my chest because I didn't particularly enjoy last week, as perhaps in retrospect, as perhaps I have done in previous weeks. And most importantly, I booked a holiday for our family. So we have booked a holiday to get over the drudgery of February. We have booked a family holiday in June of this year. And the four of us, myself, Lucy, and the two girls, are going away and going to have a nice holiday. And so it's something we finally can look forward to later on in the year during these very, very hard weeks and months of the first part of 2024. So thank you, Sean. And over to you, mate. What have you been up to?
Well, first of all, hell yeah, dude. Holidays are awesome. Like I hate planning them. I'll be real honest there. I think that's my least favorite part. But man, there's nothing better than like that feeling of like, it's kind of like setting a goal or like having things to look forward to, of just like, man, and I feel like the older I get, the more I'm like, I'm just looking forward to doing nothing, just that escape with people that you like, and just doing something different, trying on a different pair of shoes or things like that. So that's awesome. I'm glad that you guys are able to get that booked and get it coordinated, and look forward to that for you.
There is something very, very cathartic about actually looking forward to something. It doesn't matter where we're going. It doesn't matter what we're doing. The fact that we've got something to look forward to later on in the year, during what has been a pretty shit time, despite the, and then on top of that, it's during the most gloomy and dreary months of the UK year. It's just something nice to look forward to, that we can, will get us through what's been going on, and certainly until we start seeing the sun in this country, which hopefully is soon. So what about yourself, dude? Let me know what you've been up to.
Hanging out, working. I've been watching some stuff, but you want to talk about news first, or do we want to talk about what we've been watching? Because other than that, I mean, I've just been hanging out, enjoying the snow, shovel in the driveway, hanging out with the cats. Somebody, I won't name names, in this household managed to break the gaming PC. And so that's been a whole, like, it's one of those unexpected things. It's like, it's not a horrible, it's like, oh no, I got my car broke down, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh man, now I gotta figure out like what I gotta do to like fix this thing, because like the Sims isn't gonna play itself. And so that's been like kind of the core of my week of work and trying to figure out how to rebuild this gaming PC. But other than that, I've just been kind of hanging out, watching stuff. But yeah, I can chat about that when we get into the what we've been watching section. But other than that, like, I think there's some cool news that's come out. Like, so for me, one of them is the X-Men 1997 or X-Men 97 trailer. That was always one of those weird shows for me, like as a kid, that like before streaming and everything like that, like I watched it Saturday mornings. Um, and it's like Rocky and Bullwinkle. It's like I could never figure out what was going on because they were never aired in order. So I'm just like trying to like piece it all together. And this was before comics and stuff, before I was really into comics or anything like that. And so it's really cool to see this trailer come out. It's weird to see that style of animation in such high quality. So like it's kind of jarring for me to see it and like, hey, it's like 4K and it's just weird. But I'm interested to see see it when it comes out and kind of follow along. So that was kind of cool. It's kind of like a weird nostalgic like upscaling of the old story and stuff. It's weird.
I was going to ask that question because I've heard about this a lot. I hear you talking about it a lot. I hear the likes of Hawes talking about it a lot. I hear obviously King Tom is really into X-Men in particular, and I hear a lot of people talking about it. Is this literally a continuation of the old Marvel cartoon that I used to watch? I was about to say as a kid, but I wasn't. I was actually in my 20s at the time. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Is it literally that? Is it just a continuation, or is it something new?
So I can't say with absolute certainty. I believe it is. I believe it is, and I believe there's been some fill-ins. Like I was never fully clear of like the original cartoons, like how much it aligned with like what was going on with the comics and those arcs. But I believe that this is a continuation of sorts of the 97 cartoon, maybe with some additions from some snatch and grabs from some of the comics as well. Like it's not like, oh, it ended with episode 89 and now we're going to 90. I think there's a little bit of a space between and probably there's probably going to be some retconning and some changes, because from what I remember of that cartoon, like it kind of did what it wanted at times, and hopefully it's coming in with a more mature like relative, obviously, like writing style and like maybe story cohesion, instead of that like mid to late 90s late 80s kind of cartoon writing where it's like just fill 30 minutes and see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe it is a continuation. This cat, I got to throw this cat out real fast.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. I was going to say I'm actually quite looking forward to it. Because I used to enjoy the moments where I would catch up, typically on a late Friday when we came in from either clubbing or I don't know, just creating trouble in between Lucy and I in town. But what I used to like about it was the fact that it was one of those. It was really high production value. I had no idea what was going on, and then to be honest with you, as a kid reading comics, X-Men never really appealed to me. But there was these kind of nuances, and obviously, Wolverine came out of that as being quite prominent. And it's like, oh, you're pretty cool. But also, I'm looking forward to it in that some of the stuff we spoke about this last week. In that there is an awful lot of nostalgia or re-releases or reboots or reimaginations of old stuff that quite frankly runs the risk of being tired and a little bit dull. It's kind of like, because it feels like, have we lost all of our creative thinking and we're having to look at the past to kind of work out what the content's going to be for the future. But in this case, I'm looking forward to it because I really enjoyed Kevin Smith's take on He-Man recently on Netflix. Mm-hmm. And then season 2, I haven't seen it yet. But the first 2 episodes, the first 2 parts of season 1, I really, really enjoyed, despite perhaps 1 or 2 of the fan base out there expecting something else. I actually really, really enjoyed it. So if it's that kind of, I don't know, nod to nostalgia, but a reimagining in creating something new, which brings perhaps underrepresented characters that were kind of side characters, I mean, in the He-Man world, such as Teela, bring them to the forefront as being representative of society today. I'm well up for that. Really, really up for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What's funny is you bring up the He-Man show. I really enjoyed it too, but I have trouble remembering what happened because I watched that one and the other, like the kids version at the same time. And like to me, it's all one big series. I'm like, oh yeah, that was cool. And then the
Cross the streams.
yeah, like Ram Man's daughter was like, wait, no, that was like the kid version. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I enjoyed all of them. They were all cool and like and weird in their own ways, but no, like I think I think you have a really solid point there. Like I won't go into it too much because I could talk for 4.5 hours about this movie, but like it's similar to the new TMNT, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie that came out. Like I know there was a lot of criticism of it, but dude, I absolutely loved it. It's like it had the nostalgia factor, but it was new and fresh, and they changed some stuff, and it's like it I don't want to see the same story over and over again just because it was that way when I was a kid or in my 20s, you know, coming home from the bars or whatever. You're welcome. But it's like I have a passion for this universe or a certain franchise and the memories and the feelings that it makes me have, but I'm not beholden to it. Like I love the feeling, not the individual specifics of what's happened. And I think that's where maybe I've let go, not that I'm perfect or anything like that, but that's where I've let go of some of those emotional feelings, like when things get retconned in some of our popular franchises. It's like, you know what, it's still better than no content. Like I'd rather get more content than I can digest and get those feelings again, like those memories and things like that, than to just sit with my little walled garden and be like, no, these are all the things I love and don't touch anything, like leave it all alone. It's like, because if I don't like something, I just won't watch it again, or I'll just be like, yeah, well, okay, that was fine, it's whatever. But I don't know, like that's kind of my philosophy on it. It's like not everything has to be an 11 out of 10, but just being able to step into those franchises and get more content is top tier for me, for sure.
Agreed. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if it adds value to the old lore and then builds on that to create a new story, then yeah, let it. It's got legs to continue. To your point, if it's just regurgitating the old nostalgia for the sake of it, then they need to address that. But yeah, no, I'm totally with you. Anything else on your radar from the news?
I watched the Kong and Godzilla new Empire trailer. There is something inside of me that I am not proud of that gets way too like happy and giggly whenever I see like big ass kaiju beating the crap out of each other. Like the story, I don't even care. Like I don't even care. Like, oh, there's humans involved, who cares? Like there's baby Kong, like the Scar, the bad Kong looking thing. They're probably like a Shimu frost giant thing. I don't even care. I don't care what the story is, but just the idea of getting to go to a movie theater and just watch gigantic, unrealistic creatures beat the crap out of each other is so funny to me. Like there's no walking away from it unhappy. Like I loved the Pacific Rim movies, and this, I think the older I get, the more I like lean into it of like, it's just, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. It's just awesome. It's good, fun. At the end of the day, it's like, I just like watching. I want to see like a giant ape take like a bone whip, wrap it around a building, rip the building in half, and throw half the building at another monkey. That is ridiculous and awesome. And what's funny is the fly on the wall here. I promise I'll be done for this. I think that now that I'm having like a realization is like, I think it's being that fly on the wall. It's like somebody took time, and it's their job to meet with other people in a meeting and go, okay, so Sean, you're going to be in charge of animating the part where the whip wraps around the building. And it's like, people do this. This is like their job, and it's just funny. Like, I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that. But sorry, my rant, my giggly rant is
no,
over.
no, mate. I'm exactly like you. Well, you and I know at least 4 people that we know of very, very closely that will be looking at this under a microscope because they are so invested in the lore of the kaiju and everything. But like you, as I've got older, the more ridiculous a scenario, I'm loving it. and I don't really care about what's going on behind it, which is kind of the way I feel about things like the sacred Star Wars at the moment, anything like that. The more ridiculous it can get, the more I'm enjoying it, because it is so ridiculous that, quite frankly, it's a lot more fun. Um, but I mean, the idea. I mean, the first thing I did, which I'm sure insulted a few people, was I saw the trailer. It's like, wait, Kong's got an Infinity Gauntlet. What's that about? Because he's got this golden glove, right? That is
Yeah,
kicking
his mechanical armor thing. Yeah,
bashing the crap out of things. And I'm thinking, oh my god, can you imagine if they do the ultimate mashup between Kaiju and Marvel? That would really, really set the house on fire. That really, really would. Apparently, that's not the case, and I need to do my research, which I've been told I should do, and take this more seriously. But I have to say, I'm looking forward. I will go to the theater for that, just for the shits and giggles of how ridiculous the whole thing is. I love it.
it's like what that's what's funny. It's like that's the story I am invested in. It's like because I saw
Yeah.
one of our friends post like, oh, he's got like a robot hand, but then you look at it, no, his hand is still there. So like, did it just get like severed tendons so he doesn't have good function of it? But then they just put that thing on top and it's like it like gripped into his skin. It's like no, it's like the Elysium suit almost. Like it's almost
Okay.
like an exo glove. It's like he doesn't have full range of motion in his fingers, but he's got this giant like metal glove that he can just I don't know. I just love it. I made a comment in one of our threads where somebody posted the thing and the posters of them like running. It's like there's the idea of like there's nowhere that those kaiju need to be running. Like there's nothing that is going on that they would be running like full sprint. It's like, are they running across the ocean? Like what's happening? I don't know. I love it. It's awesome. I'm excited. I'm gonna go see it in theaters. It's just dumb, and I love every minute of it. It's like it does remind me. It's like go ahead.
No, I was going to say. So while we're talking about trailers, did you catch the Deadpool 3 trailer? Sorry, Deadpool and Wolverine trailer as well.
I did catch it. I feel on two I mean, I enjoyed it. Like, so it's not what I'm about to say, but I feel like I'm on both sides of a feeling where I feel like there was nothing in it on one hand, but also there was a ton of stuff in it that like kind of lends itself to like where this movie is going to go. Like I was surprised at how much kind of like Loki level stuff was in there and how they're, oh, this is going to be how they're merging the universes and kind of tying all this together. Cause I haven't really followed it. Like I haven't followed the news on it. It's like, oh, cool. Deadpool and Wolverine. I've kind of glossed over it up until recently because I just I assumed it was going to be like another, Deadpool movie that didn't really have a no consequence kind of film. But then kind of seeing the trailer, it's like, well, okay, no, it is going to have consequence in the large scale things. But then at the same time, I feel like that's all it showed. It's like, I don't really have any other idea of what kind of movie this is going to be. So but it's a good thing though.
I mean, it's R rated. We know it's R rated. It's going to be Deadpool doing Deadpool stuff, which is basically Ryan Reynolds anyway. It's very much his repertoire. What I don't think helped it out was two other Ryan Reynolds films being, I believe, part of the trailers as well. And Ryan Reynolds is fucking amazing. I love him to bits. Absolutely love him to bits. He is such a, I wouldn't say a character actor, but he's such a good, he's such a good film star to have in a film at this moment in time that gets really captures the mood of the viewing public today, and its cynicism as well, which I think is really, really cool. But then having him, I believe, in two other trailers being Ryan Reynolds, I'm not sure if that did Deadpool and Wolverine any favors, but whatever. I'm still going to go and see it. It's one of the only, that and Guardians are really the only superhero movies that Lucy likes, so that's one she'll come with me. to go and see. So hell yeah, I'm in. And if this is indeed the last of the trilogy, that unfortunately couldn't be managed through the old structure, then I've got to go and see it, because it's been a good blast. And I hope they end it, if it is indeed the end. I hope they end it on a high, because he really did reinvent the superhero movie and introduce the fourth wall, which we have obviously seen subsequently with She-Hulk, and other types of productions. But yeah, that's all on him. So I really hope he does well out of this. Just because I also think the guy's kind of cool.
Yeah, like seeing how they ended, it's probably going to be the biggest thing for me. Of like, because I mean, I'm not a writer, so it's like, how do you do it? How do you do it justice, but also try to tie it into this more, I don't want to say more serious, but a more grounded universe in a lot of ways, because it's just Deadpool. Deadpool is Deadpool. So I'm curious to see how they navigate those waters, and I hope they do it justice. I hope he gets I don't know if it's a send off or whatever it is, and I'm not looking for like an emotional thing with this.
No,
I'm not looking like for like a Guardians of the Galaxy, like pulling my coat up around my face and trying not to quiver in the movie theaters.
It wouldn't fit anyway, would it? I mean, that kind of tone wouldn't actually fit, because you'd be thinking, this is a joke. There's some sort of joke to be had here. But yeah, no, I'm totally with you. What about anything else? Anything else on your radar this week, my friend? That again has had your ears twitching.
I think that's all I have, but I know you have some stuff on your side.
Well, yeah, I mean, just. I mean, I'll get through this really quick, because it really is a list. I don't have an awful lot of information, but ironically, we talked last week about Prey in my miscommunication of what I thought Alien Romulus, what Romulus was going to be. But we've got the same director that introduced us to Prey is also doing some more anthology films on Predator for release on Disney Plus. At the moment, there's speculation that he's going to really take this idea of moments in history to demonstrate the Predator being having been visiting Earth for quite some time now. There's rumors that he may visit feudal Japan, which will be sick if that's going to be the case, and or the trenches in World War One. So the trenches in Flanders, or sorry, in Western Europe, in France, in during World War One. Either way, I'd like both, please, because I think the idea of this anthology idea of demonstrating just how these predators have been challenging us to their hunting trials for many, many years would be really, really cool, without necessarily some messy, sticky connective tissue between the main movie franchise, which I think unfortunately is what got them bogged down with new ideas. I'm really, really up for that if there's the same kind of vigor and intent to please and to plan that went into Prey. So I'm really happy about that. Donald Glover on Lando. So Donald recently was doing an interview, I believe, on the Mr. and Mrs. Smith series that I finished this week, actually. We'll talk about that later. And at the same time, it gave the reporters the opportunity to talk about his status on where he is in the Lando production, the movie that we were, the original series that we found out, 6 months ago. It's going to be developed now as a movie, which I'm really stoked about. I've talked to you long and for many, many hours about I'm really interested in the secondary, the tertiary, or indeed the any man or every man stories of the Star Wars universe, and less excited these days about the space wizard, the special ability, the Force, and all the mystical stuff. It's those kind of background dudes, or like I said, the every man or any man, that I'm really, really interested in. And for me, the absolute manifestation of that are the likes of Lando. just a guy swindling and gambling and charming his way through the galaxy. Really, really excited about. I talked about last week as part of my book collection, the original Calrissian Chronicles. The idea of him, uh, of us getting a kind of an anthology story of the week, or mystery of the week, or challenge of the week, kind of to create those kind of anecdotes which become the Calrissian Chronicles would be amazing. Although saying that, I also would like it maybe not before he met with Han Solo, but after he met with Han Solo. He lost obviously the Falcon, and at some point he finds his way back to fortune again by indeed winning Bespin. So that might also be an interesting take, and actually be, apart from Genevieve O'Reilly, who has crossed all three, if you like, um, trilogy eras, that will enable the character of Lando to be played by one actor across potentially two different timelines, which will get us over the idea that everything has to be CG and original to the OT going forward, and we can start seeing something new break out of that kind of storytelling. So I'm really looking forward to it. I've got no idea what's going on, but Lando, of all, if you remember that slate a couple of years ago, prior to COVID, that investors call that showed loads and loads and loads of productions that were being in development. One of which was it Droid Tales? One of which was obviously at the time Rangers of the New Republic. One of them was Lando, as well as Skeleton Crew and all the stuff that we're getting and loving today. The one thing that stood out for me, probably more than anyone else I know, was the Lando series, because again, it was that idea of the happy-go-lucky chancer gambler out there in the galaxy, just enjoying himself, enjoying life, and making his way in making a quick buck or so. So that for me is probably more exciting than for other people. So yeah, up for that. I've spent way too long on it. Next one was the movie schedule. So during this year's investors call, they talked about the movie schedule. There's nothing really to write home about there, apart from we know that now the first Star Wars movie will be launched in the May of 2026. So unfortunately, we're not going to get anything in 2025 as we originally suspected or hoped for. And then followed very quickly by another movie in the winter or December of 2026, and then the next one after that following being the following Christmas of 2027. So we've got an idea of schedule now, which has somewhat been lacking over recent months and perhaps even years. Well, Lucasfilm get their stuff together, work out what the post-pandemic universe looks like, and obviously the post-strike universe looks like, or planning cycle looks like, with the impact on their schedule from that. So it's good to know. We don't know which one's which. We know what's in the pipe. We know that Favreau's got his film coming up. We know that Filoni's got his film coming up. We know of the Rey movie. We know of the Rey movie. We know of the Old Republic movie that's coming out at some point. We don't know what they mean in context of this release schedule, but I'm assuming at least one or two of them will land in these slots. So we have there is light at the end of the tunnel. We have a future there, which is always good to hear. The last thing I was going to talk about was around collecting. So the first thing was, you and I know we like a little bit of Lego. Couple of rumored sets that are coming our way. First being the UCS TIE Interceptor, and being an Imperial ship fanboy as you are, I thought that might excite you. Most exciting for me is the UCS Sails Barge. Now, I don't have any room for this because I'm expecting something quite magnificent. The original Lego sail barge was at least, crikey, 45 inches across at the very least. So something that's UCS size, which should be, albeit a little bit of scaling down, as close to the relative scale of the minifigs, it's going to be frigging huge, and it's going to be a massive investment because, quite frankly, I've skipped an awful lot. I've already got the Falcon, but I skipped all of the other stuff. I skipped the UCS. Come on, the Mandalorian's ship,
The Razor
the
Crest.
Razor Crest. I skipped that. I bought the tiny one, but didn't have the space, or quite frankly, the disposable income to get the Razor Crest. So I skipped that. I skipped the Star Destroyer. I've skipped an awful lot of the UCS stuff, but the sail barge in itself is a design classic, and that scene drums up so many warm feels for me that it might be something that I get involved in. And then lastly, during the latest Hasbro Pulse conference call, I guess, or announcements they made, they announced the release or the pre-order window for the E-wing, for the Vintage Collection E-wing. Now, we spoke about this a couple of weeks back. I don't do an awful lot of collecting anymore, in that I don't have space and I don't have the inclination. And quite frankly, if the stuff doesn't land at the same time as the content, I kind of lose interest and shall I say, the immediacy to actually buy it. But I've always loved the E-wing. I've always loved the E-wing, and I don't have any apart from my Chewies. I don't have any vintage collection at all. Obviously, the original stuff I gave away to charity, but I'm talking vintage modern vintage. 12 points of articulation stuff. I don't have any of it at all, but this model is awesome. And my first reaction was, my goodness me. I mean, I felt the way in Ahsoka when they brought it back in Ahsoka, was they're finally using, Dark Empire and Heir to the Empire content and bring it into canon. And one of the things I loved about that content was the E-wing. It was the natural, in my mind, evolution of the X-wing, something different, something new that I was hoping might have been in the sequel trilogy, but it's now in canon by one way or another, and they've improved on it as well. So while I love the idea of the E-wing being the successor at the time of the X-wing, it wasn't particularly pretty, and that's because it was stylized for comic purposes. But what they've done is they've really, really looked at it in context of the existing industrial design of what they have in terms of starships and models, and added a certain amount of real life elements to it, as how will this ship operate in atmosphere? How will it look compared to modern, next generation fighters of today? And it's mint. It looks beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So as we talked about before we kicked off the call, there's a very, very good chance I'm actually going to order that one. It's affordable, unlike a lot of other things that I can't really afford or even justify to my wife at the moment. I'll probably find a spot for it to hang from the ceiling of my den.
Oh yeah, I mean it's similar to what we talked about ahead of time. The E-wing is slick, like, and I think it also helps that, like, E-wing merch is hard to come by. Like, yeah, you can go on eBay and get the old Action Fleet thing for like $600 in box, but then again, that's the old style, like the legend style, which is cool because it's so limited in its availability. But like you said, I really like the updated design. They've taken it away. They've moved it away from kind of the prequel dropship, tall, super sloped wings, bulky look, and they've really streamlined it, made it look more like a scout ship, brought it closer to the design of an X-wing, so it looks like a same manufacturer, same kind of design aesthetic. So I really really like that. It's really cool. While, like, the vintage collection is not my jam, like, mainly for space. Like, I got to be very careful about, like, the size of stuff, as I sit in an office full of crap already. But no, it is really cool, and like I want to see it in person. Like, that's one of those, I've gotten so picky with what I get anymore. It's either got to be something really unique or just like caught in the moment. But that one is tempting. That's probably more tempting than most have been in the past. And I also had a thought about the UCS Lego stuff. So I caught wind of the UCS sail barge. I think you'd mentioned it or something, and I started digging into it, but I can't seem to find any concrete information on it. Like, it sound like, correct me if I'm wrong, I have all of the images that I've seen of it are like kind of like weird leaks, or either like digital transfers of like something that somebody found online, or like people masquerading the old set as the new set. But from what I was able to find, like, it seems like it came from like these surveys that were sent out, like asking people about pricing and things like that. But I haven't been able to find like a concrete image of it, because I'm curious how a UCS sail barge would work and look, because like, just from looking at the images and just looking at the scale, and like, obviously Lego is a certain aesthetic. It's like, that needs to be UCS level. It's like, I feel like it would need to be absolutely massive to get the level of detail. I mean, not like the HasLab like version, not quite that big, but I feel like it would need to be pretty big to justify and kind of warrant the UCS level branding. So I'm curious to see how that works, and if it does pan out. Like, I don't know.
There's a few guys I follow, and I enjoy building Lego when I'm on my own, just to clear my brain. It's not anything. It's not something that I do out of any kind of collection addiction. I just do it when there's something I like, and not necessarily consistent with the rest of my collection. So, for example, Lucy and I did a bonsai tree at Christmas time together because it was a great looking kit, and we did it.
That guy,
and so have you. That oh God, I've got to just, yeah. Whenever I mention something, you've got it. But yes, that one, that one there. But there's a couple of guys, because of that. There's a couple of guys that I follow, and they've already kind of got the UCS serial number. It's a little bit like the way that Yak Face, looks into code names, and kind of predicts what's coming on. And there's a few of them out there. It may well be BS. I've no idea. But if it is happening, I would like to think that there's an awful lot more scope for UCS, because, of course, the Hasbro Pulse sail barge was built off a 3.75 inch character, which gave it 2 floors, and only 2 floors. Whereas if they do something a similar size, even a little bit smaller, it's going to be based on a minifigure size, so that the scope available to them, with not as much detail, of course, because it's Lego, not and not Hasbro, but I'd like to think that it's going to be worth its weight. And these guys in particular, it's really interesting because they talk about the value of kits an awful lot as well, and they basically work out the value of a kit, whether it's worth buying or not, based on the number of pieces divided by the total cost, also the total cost of the year divided by the number of pieces. And typically they'll come out with this is good value, or this is really bad value, and they come out with a kind of assessment. So there are definitely people that are talking about it online that are better experts than I am about it.
For sure.
If it doesn't come to anything, again, we'll send another correction or an apology. But it has got me thinking. My mind grates have been going at 2 a.m. Ooh, that'll be nice. I need to find a nice place for that. Yeah.
Speaking of the correction, I was sitting there thinking about it. It popped into my head when you were talking about it. I was like, what if that was just like one of the Easter eggs of the podcast going forward? Like, we always just slipped one random piece of like slightly wrong information in just to get people's mind grapes going, intentionally or not. Like, every episode's just like, meh, this is coming. I heard this is coming.
I have every expectation that this won't be the first, and certainly not the last time that we get our facts wrong. I'm just reading it out as I see it. So if we get it wrong, we get it wrong, and forgive us, but we love you all.
It's like, what's your source? It's like, I'm just excited about it. That's what, because I want it. So I'm manifesting it into reality.
I've made it up. Yeah. I'm manifesting it. I'm manifesting it in my own brain, and so therefore it must be true. So tell me, brother, what have you been watching this week? And mine's going to be relatively binary, so take as much time as you need.
So, I mean, I've watched a lot of tutorials on how to like repair gaming computers, but that's not interesting. Um, the there's kind of two main things that I think are noteworthy that I watched that I really kind of had some takeaways from. One of those I think is easy to discuss, and that's the Halo season 2 series on, what was that, Paramount Plus or whatever it was. Um, I know, like I enjoyed season 1, but I think that's because like I was like I'm not it's not beholden to the original kind of like game series story. Like it's inspired by it, but it doesn't follow it by any means.
Yeah.
And personally, like, I know this is kind of in a lot of circles a controversial opinion, but I'm kind of glad they did that. Um like, one, I have no idea where it's going, but two, I think it changes. Like, I don't want to see that same story rehashed. Like, it's especially when you're in a video game, like you get so much detail and so much time that and nuance and details that you can't get in a TV show. So I think it needs to be adapted. I don't think you can do a 1-to-1, otherwise it'll just be boring or lack detail. So I think they're doing a very interesting job. I know there were a lot of criticisms around him, like taking his helmet off. It was like, oh no, it's Master Chief. Like, why is his helmet off? Why is Pablo, I forget his last name, underneath there? But I mean, it's like, which is crazy to me, because it's like, you want Mandalorian to take his helmet off, but then we want Master Chief to keep his on. And it's like, I get that there's different reasons, but it was just like, it's whatever. Like, I like it. It was fun. It was interesting. Season 2 it started out kind of slow. I think they released like 1 or 2 episodes. I think I've watched 3 so far. It hasn't dug into a lot of the stuff that went into season 1. So that part's kind of sucks, and it's kind of slow. I wish they'd just give me the rest of the episodes, but I'm enjoying it. Like, it's kind of cool seeing some of the Halo Reach level, like, oh, I have a team of people that are important. It's not just me and Cortana and a bunch of cannon fodder. But I will say the funny thing, the first thing I noticed between season 1 and season 2 is that lead actor, he's freaking yoked between seasons. He is massive now, and it is crazy. I need to get on that workout regimen and that diet, because it insane. It's like incredible. But other than that, like, it's a fun show. I encourage people to watch it. Like, check if you're a huge fan of Halo and the story, like the games, like, go in with an open mind and be like, it's inspired by Halo. It's Halo, but through a certain point of view. And I think it's really interesting and engaging how it's kind of turning out.
See, that's always a difficult thing, right? We're going to talk. We've promised each other that in a future week, and if we can get a much loved friend of ours to come on as a guest, that would be great. But if not, we'll talk about it anyway. But the idea of, again, we will talk about at some point a game to movie or game to TV series or comic to movie or comic to TV series conversion, and what's worked and what's not. And in my mind, what's not worked and got the most criticism is where they've tried so hard. I'll give you Watchmen as an example, is where they've tried so hard to keep to the written word and to replicate it like for like. You're never going to get it right. You're never ever going to get it right. And so then taking an interpretation of that and doing your own thing, it's lower risk. Yeah, it might be quite jarring in terms of not being exactly the same as you remember it, but getting it exactly as you remember it, if that's what they're trying to achieve, is so goddamn difficult that, quite frankly, it ends up typically failing. So I like the idea of reinterpretations of stuff. It's a good thing.
Unless it comes out extremely close to when the original source came out, because there's, like you said, like, there's a million factors. Like, Watchmen, the comic came out a while ago, and then the movie came out not close to it, and so it's like you have to factor in the age and the society and the zeitgeist and everything of that time, and like, you'll never replicate that same feeling and emotion when new content is created. So like the further away from the original source material that you you create it, you have to make adjustments. Like Dune is different is from from the books intentionally, like because it has to adapt to the times. But and I think the same is right for Halo, and it's a different medium, similar to what we talked about last week with comics. It's like in the Dr. Aphra stuff, it's like Dr. Aphra in a visual medium is going to be different from the comics because it's a different like you have a different set of timing, you have a different pacing, you have different things like that. And so a video game, you have all the time in the world. You could sit there, I could spend 300 hours going through a story and I get every little nugget and piece of information, but you don't get that in a movie or a series. No. Like if you tried to do it in a series, like, oh, just put it into 30, 10 minute episodes. It's like, it's not the same. Like you have to button it up. So I like what they're doing. I think it's interesting. It is what it is. It's not Andor like by any means, but it's good fun seeing live action versions of some of these the characters and where they're taking it. So I'm digging it. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's be perfectly honest with each other as well. If there's some good sci-fi with some pretty good industrial design, tech, and starship porn, it's also just worth watching for that as well. I mean, I've watched the most absolute crap over the years, but the design and the tech has been really, really damn good. And do you remember a series called A Space Above and Beyond? It was not the best TV program of all time, but the tech in it was awesome, and it was worth my time just following that every week because of that alone. I fair play, and when I get a chance, I will watch it as well. What about the other stuff? Are you still catching up with what's it called? Warriors of the Air? Come on, help me out here. Gods of the
Masters
Air.
Masters of the Air.
Masters of the Air. Masters of the Air.
Yeah, I'm catching up. It's getting spicy now. There's. Cool. I think my problem is I know too much about the real life aspects of it. Like I know the names, so I know like the weight of like did they die? That's like I know the answers to that. So I think maybe there's an element of like I'm not biting my fingernails to find out what happens next week because like I kind of that's kind of had that spoiled because it's real life, but it's good. Like it's good. It's not currently the quality or like doesn't have the impact of the others personally, but it's good. I really enjoy it. It's starting to get more interesting. It's not kind of those setup episodes, but yeah, it's when we get to episode like 7, 8, and 9, I'll probably have more thoughts. But
also your expectations will be higher as well because you can see it ramping to hopefully a moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. They've not that I hate that I'm using this term. I'm hate that I'm saying this about real life events, but I'm saying it in the way that we frame these kind of like war movies. Sure. It's like some of the extras have like when you start weeding them out by whatever means and you start getting left with a core group, that's when you're like, okay, now I know who like the character development is going to happen with and who we're going to stick with for a while. Because these are the kind of now we're into the stories and now we're done with the setup. So we're starting to learn the names is another way to phrase it. There's only one other thing that I watched this week that I think is of note. And it was actually kind of surprising. So I'm hoping to talk about it a little bit because I believe you've seen it as well. And I finally bit the bullet. I had some time and I sat down and watched The Marvels on Disney Plus. I have heard nothing but bad reviews, bad takes, which I kind of went in assuming that a lot of it had to do with kind of somebody's like reviewers dislike for people like Brie Larson or just the general concept of Captain Marvel and all that shit you always hear about that. But I just kind of went in with like I enjoyed Captain Marvel. I enjoyed Miss Marvel series. And so I was like, and I enjoyed WandaVision and those. So it's like, all right, let's just no stakes. I'm not picking this or that, and I'm going to be disappointed if this sucks. I should have watched something else. It's like, no, I'm bored, and I'm going to watch this. And a couple major takeaways, and that I'd love to get your opinion, get your thoughts on it if you felt the same way. So story wise, I thought it was, I wouldn't say like great, but it was like it was fine. Like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie. My criticisms come in not around the story, the arc, or anything related to that. It felt odd to watch at times because it felt like they had a 2 hour plus movie originally, and they're like, we have to get this down to like an hour 45. And so instead of cutting maybe scenes that weren't relevant, it's almost like they used the only thing I could think of is like they used an AI tool and said, just cut out the parts where people aren't talking. And so like the beginning and ends of scenes were just like, there's times in the movie where it just felt like there was no space. Like it would cut and somebody would be immediately talking. Like there was no, like that's how they, it's like that's how they trimmed it. Cause there were scenes that were like, okay, this is nice. We're getting some space. We're getting some extra story, but then it would just be boom, 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 just rapid fire between these cuts. And I'm like, it didn't affect the story. It just felt like an odd, like movie watching experience of like, it feels like they didn't cut content. They just cut out white noise, like white space, like gaps in speaking.
Yeah. Which of course, silence can be powerful, and facial acting can be equally as powerful as a spoken word. And I would agree with that. And I think that unfortunately, this movie, again, it's where it's the adage of we don't deserve nice things, because it's one of those things where unfortunately for this movie, I think it was damned before it even came out. There was already a certain bunch of folk that decided it was going to be the worst thing ever, even if it was the best thing ever. And to a certain degree, I mean, you and I have spoken about this before. Sometimes we have too much inside knowledge of what's going on in Disney and in Marvel and in Lucasfilm. There's too much information, and this is stuff that happens. We see the problems that happen with productions. And this is stuff that happens all the time. It's not exclusive to Disney. It's not exclusive to any network. It's not exclusive to the movie industry. It's exclusive to every single corporation. Has to go through a reset. Has to go through a restart. I mean, shit. I mean, you know what's going on with our business at the moment. We're having an almighty reorganization again. 9 months after the last one. It just happens. It just happens in the background. But because typically the public are told what they need to know and nothing more, then it kind of just happens in the background, and changes are made, and they course correct their business, their strategy, and their tactical execution. The same applies to these kind of films, and unfortunately, with the original and then subsequent treatment of Brie Larson in particular, which I thought was completely unnecessary, because I really like Captain Marvel. I don't know what I couldn't see what others clearly could. And her, the impact that she made, in that final Avengers moment in Endgame was just ace. It was just brilliant. And then this whole representation of females in that final Avengers moment, it was hugely cheesy, but good God, it was brilliant. It was really, really good. And unfortunately with this, I think that film was somehow cursed, and I think there was I could be wrong, and I really hope I'm wrong, but there was an attitude of, let's just get it out of the door, because we've made it now. Let's get it out of the door. And so maybe some of the finer parts of production, which include editing. I mean, look how, we all know the stories of the original Star Wars, and how if it wasn't for George Lucas's wife, Melinda, was it Melinda? At the time, the film wouldn't have been half of what it was, because of the way it was edited. I think you're right, and I think it's such a shame that perhaps not as much time was maybe put into that as it could have been. A little bit more, little less exposition, and a little bit more development through physical acting and facial acting and pregnant pauses between moments. I think would have done it an awful lot of good. So I think you're spot on there.
I think you're. I think. Oh, go ahead.
I'll leave it with you to kind of sum up what you thought about the whole movie. But I'll be really quick. I enjoyed it. I thought it was it the best movie I've ever seen? No, but it was a really good romp, and I'm really glad I got to see it in the end.
The same. I think you're onto something there with like, I bet there was a mentality of like, it's not gonna make it's the 80-20 rule. It's like, we got it 80% of the way there, and like the extra 20% is not gonna get us more money. It's gonna do what it's gonna do, because there was other parts. Like, to be clear, I enjoyed the movie. There were parts of it that I audibly laughed out loud. Like, were from either sheer ridiculousness or just a level of self-awareness that was unexpected. I don't even want to talk about those things, because I think you just have to watch it and not be prepared for what happens. I will say, if you are a cat lover, you should watch it. I think it's just worth it. The whole movie is just worth it. If you are somebody who enjoys cats, watch it. You won't be disappointed. I think it's fantastic. And I think your point about the budget or things like makes sense too, because I think my only other criticism, all my criticisms are about post-production, because it felt like there were parts of the movie that felt unfinished from a post-production standpoint, that it didn't take away. It's just from that when you sit in the critical chair of like, that looks weird. But then you go to the next scene and it's like, we're talking Avengers level, amazing special effects and things like that. Then you get to another scene. It's like, this feels unfinished. Like, I feel if something feels weird here. And I bet it's that same kind of thing. It's like, we're not gonna invest anymore in like insane special effects. So it's gonna be poof right here.
I think I 100% agree, and I've always wondered in the back of my mind, how are they going to link the Disney Plus TV series with the movies? And this was, if you think about it, the first time they've done that. If you think about everything that we've had in TV up until now, it's been from the movies to TV. So the spin-off of Loki, the spin-off of Falcon and Winter Soldier, all, the that's kind of been the way that it's been done. They are carrying on the story from the end of, from the conclusion of Endgame. And yet you introduce new characters in the Disney Plus series, and then you try and take them to the cinematic universe or the movie screen. And this was the first time of doing it, which is the reason why I'm going to really enjoy Deadpool and Wolverine. But to your point earlier on about the amount that it lends itself to tidbits and story plots, or sorry, tropes that come from the Loki TV series, I hope it will be a little bit more seamless and a little bit more first party. Should we call it first party? In the movie environment, as opposed to and being it quite a natural progression. And I think that that's the only thing I would say, was that sometimes it felt like I was watching the TV series.
The tone shifts,
despite
the tone shift that changes,
despite it being on a movie budget. But I freaking enjoyed it, and I tell you what, the more of the more shit like that, the better. Because quite frankly, until we have to over index on diversity at the moment, because quite frankly, it's underrepresented. And so when we get to a point where we've got, 3 leading ladies being commonplace in a major Hollywood production, we just need more of it, more and more of it, until it becomes natural. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on my political agenda now, so I'll shut up.
Hey, I think that's totally fine. I agree 100%. I enjoyed it, and I if you have the time, this is my official stance. If you have the time and there's not something that's you're really excited about, I'd watch it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I had a good time. Like even my criticisms that I've brought up here are strictly like they weren't to the point where it's like I don't enjoy this. This is too much. No, it was just like if I had to look for something that people could not like about it, I enjoy, but I thought it was fun. I had a good time. I laughed out loud.
Yeah.
I pulled Madison downstairs at one point after I watched it. I'm like, you have to see these parts. There's a couple of parts.
Yeah.
I know you don't care about the movie, but I want you to see it. Like, and that's what I take away from it. Like, it was enjoyable. Yeah, that's my stance on the Marvels. I thought it was cool.
One day I will get back on my soapbox about the idea of representation, and it's really down to my girls. Both my girls did STEM subjects at university. They were a minority in their graduating year. Women were not seen as being the proper kind of person the proper kind of people to graduate in the sciences. And I'm proud that they both came out, both of them with first class honors. They beat the majority they were in the higher percentile within their graduating year. And unfortunately, despite being a middle-aged white guy who has nothing to worry about in life when it comes down to the way that I'm represented, experiencing them going through school, going through education, and being a minority and the way that they've been treated, not only by their peers, but also by the system, in inverted commas. I could talk about this for hours, and I will talk about this for hours one day with you. But this kind of movie is kind of for them, where it's important. It's really important that we have this kind of stuff. Anyway, sorry.
I promise you I'll stop. Now you got me going. Nope. No, and I agree 1,000,000% because I am a firm believer that, the last thing we need, because I'm putting in mindset of my work, and like I do STEM stuff, and it's like, diversity makes the whole team better. Like, no matter what angle you want to look at it from, it's like the last thing I need or anybody needs is another person who has the same life experience and exact same, like, I don't need another clone. Like, we need different opinions. We need different viewpoints, different life experiences. That makes whatever you are doing, whether that is work, movies, storytelling, etc., like, it makes it better. Like, it may be uncomfortable and it may not be a sit there and, just, I agree 110% with everything that's going on, but that doesn't matter. Like, that's not interesting. Like,
that's how businesses fail. Typically, that's how businesses fail.
It's like
the sycophant, Caesarian type of leadership of old is gone. It's gone. And if it's not gone, I wouldn't place too high a bet on the opportunity for those kind of businesses going forward, or that kind of industry going forward. Sorry, I took us down a rat hole. I don't want to do. We're staying positive. We're staying positive. So since we last spoke, and now I've shared with everyone what the last couple of weeks have been like for me. I spent a lot of time in hospital at night and during the day, backwards and forwards, doing my bit for the family and making sure people were fed, they were visited. We did our shifts, which meant that I spent an awful lot of time catching up with TV in hospital waiting rooms. So I'm pleased to say I finished Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I know that there are one or two of our friends, and in fact, going back to this week's the Sith list, I know that Tom in particular is looking at it, and at the moment he's considering it or looking at it quite favorably. But it is a slow burn for the first 3 episodes because they're trying to establish themselves as characters. They're doing all of that kind of stuff. But there's a light-hearted but somewhat dark humor that's running all the way through the first 3 episodes, which is very typical of very typical of, oh God, what am I trying to say? Donald Glover. Sorry, Donald Glover. Not as obscure and surreal as Atlanta, but certainly that tone of a lot of character development, a lot of, again, facial acting, a lot of pregnant pauses and situation up. Gets to episode 4 and it starts getting a little bit more twisted. And then come episode 5, it gets absolutely batshit crazy. Just to remind you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith are basically is a code name for a couple that are Secret Service agents or assassins or government agents or whoever they are, we don't know, that do some relatively nasty jobs in getting rid of people, protecting people, or indeed seizing information. Think of it almost like the MIB. It's almost like MIB, but a little bit more gritty. Gets to, like I said, episode 4, and then episode 5 onwards, it goes batshit crazy, and they have become from essentially very raw rookies into these seasoned professionals very, very quickly, both of which have these amazingly relatable human issues around relationship management. At one point, they go off for marriage guidance counseling. I'm not giving anything away, I promised you. And the season ends, I wouldn't say with a cliffhanger. There's a definitive ending to the season, which could mean it's a one and done, or it could mean it leads on to something else. It leaves it very, very wide open, but I have to say it's a very, very satisfactory watch, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I like that initial 3 episode slow burn, so we can get to know the individuals that were seemingly doing this as professionals and it being a job for them, but then to grow into this relationship where they very much codependent on each other was really, really good. So that's number 1. Number 2, I'm still watching For All Mankind. Lucy and I are. Haven't been so much on it because of the jobs we've been doing for the last couple of weeks, but still enjoying it. We're on season 3 now, so it's now in the 90s. So it's really, really every season essentially is a leap forward by 10 years. Again, really enjoying the perverse butterfly or the skew on history of historical events around people, incidences, and so on and so forth that just so happen to be different to what actually happened in reality. So really, really interesting, and it's really compelling viewing. And at some point, I will, I could talk to you about this forever and a day, because it is, for me, one of the nicest things I've seen and most interesting things I've seen on TV for quite a while. I am still rewatching Battlestar Galactica in the background when I'm cooking, because again, it's a brain switch off. I don't have to concentrate. I know what's coming up, but I like the stuff that's on the screen. Watching that, and in the meantime, because of what's been going on at home at the moment, the kids have been back an awful lot more than they normally are. So I talked about last week about them being back the previous weekend. They've been back subsequently. And the stuff that I forgot that they were watching in the background that I'm now getting a little bit more engaged in is we're rewatching Scrubs, which is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And I'd forgotten just how classic Scrubs is and how quite it's never been replicated in any way. And I'm really, really enjoying the rewatch of that. And then lastly, as part of my I don't have internet in the hospital, I recently rewatched for shits and giggles. I rewatched The Last Starfighter, which I don't know if you ever watched that film when you were a kid, but it was a big, big part of my childhood. And in fact, the computer graphics around the spaceships and some of the space combat was probably one of the first projects that Lucasfilm, or the Lucasfilm division that created the Pixar animation modeling tool that ended up becoming Pixar. It's one of their first ventures they got involved in. It doesn't hold up today, but it still looks amazingly great. And I just love that film because it's just full of nostalgia and heartstrings. And I watched that. So that was my week. Not a lot, nowhere near as much as I have in recent weeks, but for obvious reasons, it's still been a lot of fun.
2 things. If you're doing a Scrubs rewatch, you should consider the companion podcast that they do.
Oh wow,
JD and whatever their names are. They do like an episode by episode companion podcast, and they'll have like special guests like Bill Lawrence and stuff to talk about the different things. It was Madison and I were doing we started doing a full rewatch years ago, but then we fell off and and haven't picked it back up.
Yeah,
But the podcast was really interesting. And also, if you like Bill Lawrence shows, Shrinking on Apple TV is really good, and so is Ted Lasso. Those are both very good Bill Lawrence shows.
Shrinking with Harrison Ford.
Yep.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I think it's got a season 2 on its way, isn't it? Isn't there?
Oh, I hope so. I mean,
yeah, no, it's really good.
They kind of left it open ended. I'm hoping they become.
Well, in particular, I thought the way that Harrison's playing his role in that, I think, is fantastic as well. In that he's typically grumpy old Harrison Ford, but showing a shitload of vulnerability as well, both in his health, but also in terms of his lack of empathy with people he engages with. I think is absolutely phenomenal. And again, it's one of those moments where he comes out of that Harrison Ford movie shell or skin that he's got and becomes something really quite different. And I really appreciate that.
Cool. Nuanced.
Oh,
quite nuanced.
Thank you. Okay, so we're 1/4 the hour of recording, and our conversation this week is going to be really focused on you, my friend. So I heard about a new theme park that's being built, developed, or launched in, I believe, in Florida. It is Epic Universal or Epic Universe, which is supposedly
Universal Epic Universe.
Okay, Epic. Okay, great. The point being is that I want to know a lot more about you and your experience in working for Disney parks, but also what you think of this new challenger in the ring to someone like Disney. And I've heard of many different podcasts, and you and I spoke about a few of them before we started, that have a different take on what this means. It could be good, it could be bad, it could be, Disney may well treat it indifferently, or indeed they may up their game based on this new competition. So I'd love to know that. But in the meantime, before I was very quickly going to kind of explain to you my background on theme parks. I have very limited knowledge, expertise on theme parks. When the children were small, we took them twice to Euro Disney, which is what it was called then, but it's now Disneyland Paris. It was fine. I wasn't particularly impressed, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I know there are friends of yours and mine that were, thought the place was relatively magical because they'd experienced stateside what Disney was about. It was very small, certainly when we went as well. And again, it was fine, but you could probably do the whole place in 2 days. So that give you some context as to so you end up repeating your favorite rides, and it was fine. You had we did the breakfast character breakfasts for the kids, which was exciting at the time. And in the evening, they'd stay up late until they basically were falling asleep on our shoulders to watch the light parade at night and the fireworks and everything. But it was. I'm glad I took them, but it didn't blow my socks off. In the UK, there are 3 parks that I've been to. Legoland has a big presence in the UK. It's a relatively established theme park, but it's literally Legoland. Very similar to what they have in the Nordics, on a very grand scale. It's very fantastical. It's very clever, but it's very much focused on Lego. Peppa Pig World. So shout out to Josh Chapman and those guys. We've got Peppa Pig World in the New Forest in the UK as well. Again, it's very much a young kids theme park. Very much focused on experiencing Peppa Pig and her world in a theme park environment. Lots of nice rides, lots of candy. The kids get sick, we take them home, they fall asleep in the car, that kind of stuff. And then lastly, there's I would say the closest to, is it Six Flags over in Atlanta? Is it Six Flags?
It's if it's not, it's probably some subsidiary or somebody who bought them.
Yeah,
but most likely Six Flags. Yeah,
which is essentially it's not a theme park. It's an amusement park with just rides. That's all it is rides, and that is Alton Towers in the UK, up in the northwest. That's quite a big thing in the UK. It was probably the first proper permanent fixture where we had lots and lots of roller coasters and stuff to make you sick and the rest of it. It's still relatively big today, but it's still a relatively rudimentary experience, and it's the rides. There's nothing really else there. Outside of that, I'm really into the experiences. So the UK is I would say a little bit more biased towards experience. So, for example, the Harry Potter studio tour is a big thing over here. We have something called there's the Sherlock experience, which essentially is a glorified escape room. My favorite of all of them, and it was bought for me by the kids for my birthday last year, is the War of the World experience. So it's a massive warehouse in London that's basically been taken over and divided into this set of rooms and experiences whereby you reenact the original H.G. Wells War of the Worlds story based in the 1800s. So everyone's very much dressed in their best bib and tucker and military uniforms and all that kind of stuff. There's a little bit of VR involved as well, but it's all done to the original 1970s, 80s soundtrack of what's his name? Jeff Love. Is it Jeff Love? War of the Worlds? Anyway, the point being is it's the guy that did the War of the Worlds disco kind of tunes back in the 70s, and it's a lot of fun. It's a really lot of fun, and that's kind of it. I mean, there's lots and lots of other things. There's Phantom Peak that is just set up in Canary Wharf where my kids live, which is basically a floating town that has been built in Canary Wharf, which is basically the River Thames, and it's a pseudo steampunk come Wild West town that's been built, and it's kind of like an escape room experience combined with a mystery tour, but it's free roaming. You don't have to go from one room to the next to the rest of it. You basically have to solve puzzles all the way around this place. It's quite an adult attraction. The closest I can think of it, the way aesthetically it looks a little bit like Fallout. If you remember the original Fallout game, which was very much based in the 50s, but with modern technology, it's a little bit like that, albeit it's, if you like, modern technology fusion with a Wild West experience. So those kind of things are very, very prolific in the UK, and I enjoy those a great deal. But I have absolutely zero experience on theme parks, proper theme parks, hence my question to you. And now over to you to take us out with everything you know about A, the announcement from Universal, and B, what you think the implications of this announcement will be for someone like Disney.
So I am very invested in this kind of topic, so I will try to break it into a couple different segments so I don't ramble for 4.5 hours with all sorts of stuff. I'll give a little context for myself as well. A lot of my experience comes from Madison and I were meeting and working together at Disney World in Florida back in 2009 when we were both members of the Disney College program, which I could talk about that whole thing another day because that's a whole other conversation. I've always been into theme parks. I'm familiar with Alton Towers because of Roller Coaster Tycoon, at least from a digital standpoint. It's what I used to want to do. I used to want to, and that's kind of where I got interested in technology and kind of in my current career path. Until I was like, nah, that's not what I want, but I kind of did something different. I wanted to go into the show making and the ride, not necessarily roller coaster design, but like ride and kind of experience design stuff. But my industrial design stuff is not strong enough to carry me on that path. But so that's kind of where I come in from it. And so, but I've always had like an obsession and kind of a fascination with a lot of it. I won't say I'm a Disney adult. That's not really the perspective that I have on it, but I am interested in the Disney company and Universal and kind of how they operate the parks and experiences divisions separately from an entertainment company and the kind of the marrying between the two. So I currently live in California now, so I obviously have experience down here as well with Disneyland and some of the other Universal Hollywood, et cetera, et cetera. So for context of kind of what this Universal Epic Universe is, there's, for those who are unaware, California has the original Disneyland and Universal Hollywood. Those are both smaller experiences since Disneyland was built in 55. It was built, and then the city of Anaheim quickly was built around it. So it's pretty landlocked. They're doing some creative stuff currently to make it bigger as we can speak, but it's always been considered it's a landlocked park. And so Disney tries to be an immersive experience in that when you enter the parks, you kind of enter like a magical world, etc. But Disneyland always struggled with the idea of like there's like helicopters flying overhead. You can hear an ambulance drive by down or whatever the city streets because Anaheim is up on it. So when they were investigating building a second park in Florida, they wanted a lot of property because they wanted it to be an immersive experience. So I could talk about all this other crap sometime, but there's a couple really good historical books about it if you're interested in it that I could recommend. But basically, they didn't say who they were. They bought an absolute ton of property using shell companies and were able to, so they didn't jack up the prices in Florida and bought a bajillion acres. I don't know how much it's, but it's a lot. It's huge. And then they built Disney World, which is intended to be a multiple park, immersive experience in Florida. So like when you enter, they don't want the everyday world interacting with you. You're kind of in a magical place. Universal Florida also tried to do something similar, but they built it way later. So they were unable to, they're more closer to the city of Orlando and are more landlocked. They've always they've always tried to be competitive in a ways. So Disneyland is like a 2-day park. It's not a huge international park like Florida is. Florida for the longest time has been it's a big international audience will come in because there's more to do, multiple parks for both Disney and Universal and SeaWorld and everything else. And so it's more of a destination experience. And they've always tried to kind of compete as if they were trying to build the same thing. This is my perspective of it, where Disney has always leaned on the Disney IP and the Disney kind of cohesive experience of, magic, childhood wonder, magic, you can dream, you can be whatever when you wish upon a star, whatever. Universal has always struggled because their IP changes. They are a different type of company than Disney. And for many years, I would say that they struggled because they were trying to compete with Disney World. For a long time, they leaned on kind of being in between, like trying to play both worlds. We're like, we're immersive, but we also have like the big crazy roller coasters, like a Six Flags, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they kind of did both things okay. Epic Universe so it's been around for quite a while. It was announced, I think, back in 2019, but I think the pandemic caused delays, and they finally, like, what's funny is they just made this huge announcement, but they're pretty far along in it. I think it's opening not terribly, I think in 2025. So it's not like it's a secret. They've been building this for a while. It's interesting because to me it's relevant because it's a step in the right direction for Universal of acknowledging, and you can see it elsewhere in some of their other parks, of we don't have a cohesive brand. And so we're going to try to stop trying to make it like a Disney, where Disney's like, we have these magical themed lands full of Disney IP, but everything kind of flows because it's all one unified thing. Universal's like, you can see it with the Harry Potter stuff. You can see it with the Super Mario stuff. It's like, we have some really strong brands and we don't care about like cohesive immersion. It's like, no, you walk through that door, it's Harry Potter. You walk out that door, it's Super Mario. It's like, are they related? No. Who cares? You like it, go for it. And so this Epic Universe, I think, is an even further step in that direction, where they kind of try. They're like, we have these gateway portals between these different lands, which, if you're unfamiliar, the lands being like the sections of the park that are themed. There's like a How to Train Your Dragon one, another Harry Potter land, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the Universal Classic Monsters, which is hilarious to me. I love that the fact that they will not, like, they still lean on that IP of like Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, and things like that. Like, they have a whole land theme to it now. And then they're also building like the Nintendo stuff there as well. And so it's all these like weird mishmash.
That's quite smart. I was going to say the Universal Monsters one is kind of smart because nobody else is doing that, and there's such a renaissance.
If they ever figure out how to make content with those again.
Yeah,
like I know they've tried a couple times. Like that'll be a cash cow. Like I think they're just waiting for the right moment when that becomes interesting. And so it's interesting that they're building this. It's like, okay, they're leaning in. A big part of it is in response. So Disney bought Marvel, but Universal in Florida used to be primarily Marvel rides, Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, things like that. And for a long time, when Disney bought them, there was a contract where Disney wouldn't have established Marvel characters in the Florida parks because Universal being right there. But there was obviously a window. And I think this is kind of the response of make the old rides more generic, transition this into new IP since we just lost a big heavy leg of it. So I think all of that to say, TLDR, I think this is really good for Universal. I think it's a step in the right direction of them acknowledging that they provide a different service than Disney World does. They're both valid and they're both awesome. And I think they're for different experiences, different types of families, different types of trips. They can be in the same trip, but I don't think you can ever say, oh, should we go to Disney World or go to Universal? Like they are the same. Which one do you pick? They provide different experiences. And I think this is really good for Universal because I think they need this. I don't like some of the ways that they have gone about some of these things in the past, and I don't like some of the things about this. So for instance, the two existing parks at Universal, they have Harry Potter lands in each one of them connected by a train. You can't ride the train from one park to the other unless you have the type of ticket that lets you into both parks in the same day. Like it may have changed, but this is how it was for the longest time. So it's like, oh, you can't do part of like it feels like cash grabby to me. It's like, oh, you can go if you only have a ticket that lets you in one park, you can't do the train because you can't technically enter that other park over there. It's like that feels a bit scummy to me. And I don't like it. Yeah. And so I hope that there's not an aspect of that built into here, but there's a lot of stuff that is really, really positive. I think the Harry Potter stuff is really pushed them to lean into the IP. I think the Super Nintendo stuff is fantastically profitable for them. The thing that I find that I'm going to keep my eye on for the future is when they have these really hardcore themed lands, I'm curious to see how they age. Theme parks, especially in Florida, get a lot of sun, and it's very like anything that's out in the sun, you will see get UV damage really, really quickly. So something like the Super Nintendo land, where it's all bright colors, et cetera, et cetera. I'm curious to see how this kind of stuff ages and if they continue to invest in it, because it's not about just building the lands. It's about keeping them maintained and making them look nice, because they will age quickly. So that's what I'm most curious about with a lot of this.
I find that really interesting because that's exactly how I felt about Disneyland Paris. So on the opposite side of the weather spectrum, Paris is on the same, on the same latitude as the UK, awful lot of the UK, and so they get very, very similar weather to us. And the first time I took the kids to Disneyland Paris. It was very new, and so very, you could still smell new paint. When a few years later, because again, at the time it was very affordable to go because it was still trying to build its base and trying to work out its identity. It's actually interesting because it's sorry, I'm going to go off at a tangent. There's a very famous Belgian or French publication called Asterix the Gaul. Do you remember Asterix as a kid, the cartoon? It's a an old cartoon and there is Asterix World in the same area as Disneyland. At the time, they were getting the majority of the French euro, or sorry, in those days the French francs, because it was a very locally adored hero, and they built this entire theme park around his story and his adventures. So it looked really good, and then we went back a couple of years later, and it looked really, really tired. And it looked really tired because there were those kind of streaks of ill-fitting drainage that were just leaking over time and creating, on the outside of Cinderella's castle, you'll see these dark stains, which basically was mold from the weather, and that's when I kind of walked away thinking, yeah. So it's interesting. Sorry, I don't want to I didn't want to take you off at a tangent, but it's interesting you think about the extreme heat and it having an impact on the theme park. The extreme wet or the more temperate climates are also a bit of a pain in the ass as well to maintain, I'm sure, as well. But let me ask you. Let me ask that. Oh, sorry.
Well, that's what's interesting. It's like there's a really good book out there called like Disney War that goes through like the Michael Eisner period, where they built Euro Disney at that time, and how they tried to treat it like building the same park in Europe without those considerations and cost cutting and budget, make it super fancy, go over budget, but then not think about the longevity. And it's interesting to see how the companies have changed from like the 80s, 90s into now, where they're trying to build more, I won't say sustainable, because I think that's the wrong term, but like, how do you make it so we don't have to repaint these stupid things every 6 months?
Sure.
And have it last. So I think there's the Euro Disney stuff is very interesting of how it became about. And you saw some of those pain points for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're still correcting a lot of it. But go ahead. What was your question?
So I got two questions for you. The first being, I listen to other podcasts, as we all do. And one of the ones that I'm getting really into at the moment, we talked a little bit about it, was Thank the Maker with Nick and the other guys as well. And they were talking about this very same subject, which is the reason why I was quite keen. I know we talked about this in our first episode 0. But I wanted to revisit this because I'm fascinated by A, your background, and B, your knowledge of what's going on and what the pain points are to run a theme park, and how do you keep it fresh and how do you keep it going. And I was listening to the guys over at Thank the Maker, and one of the guys, I can't remember who said it, but what they said was it used to be that you visited Orlando and you'd, let's say, 5 days, and you would do Disney for 4 of those days, and then you do Universal for the 5th. And the point was, is what they're doing enough to grab a day from Disney? So out of 5 days, would you do 2 days now at Universal and only 3 in Disney, because it hasn't evolved as quickly as perhaps it should have done, for example? Which leads on to my second question, which was, do you think that, and again, it was another question, I'm plagiarizing these guys because I thought it was such a fascinating conversation. Do you think this is enough of I wouldn't say a risk or a threat to Disney, but is this enough? Do you think this will be enough pressure on Disney for them to reinvigorate what they're doing in the parks at the moment? So it really is twofold. Do you think that as a family coming from the UK, for example, think of yourself with me and the kids, if we were planning a trip to Orlando, which might not be the best state to visit these days, best area to visit these days. But my point being is, if I was doing a 5-day visit, do you think that what they're potentially going to do, could that eat into my Disney time? And secondly, the follow-up question to that was, do you think that Disney will be worried enough suitably to worry about the loss of that 1 day out of 5 potentially from a paying customer like myself? And do you think they'll react to it?
I believe there's a lot of nuance in this question. I personally believe that this is a good thing for Disney, not necessarily from a competition, like that they're going to get reinvigorated to do more. I think they already have plans for what they want to do in Disney World, and I don't think anything that Universal is doing is going to affect that, because I think it actually will help them, because Disney is already bursting at the seams in Florida, in terms of hotels, in terms of park capacity, and just the modifications that they have to do to the parks to make it so they can hold more people, just because the volume of visitors is huge. It's just it's unreal. So they're probably looking at it from a standpoint of maybe not openly saying it, but like, this is going to ease the burden a little bit and give people more places to go. I think this is
Right.
from a Universal perspective. I think this is less of a trying to grab people away from Disney and more trying to pull people away from some of the smaller, more Six Flags style parks that are very close to them. Like SeaWorld and some of these others that have some of the crazier, like the crazy roller coasters and stuff like that. I think those are honestly some of their bigger competitors, because they are close. And I think it's easy when you are in proximity to Universal to say, well, look at that park right there. It's got 1 billion roller coasters. Let's cut the price of Universal is really high, closer to a Disney. Let's just do a 1 day at Universal and go to SeaWorld or wherever, some of these other roller coaster parks for cheaper. This, I think, will help round out Universal to be more of a multi-day park in competition to some of the other ones that are very close to it. In terms of also pulling people away from Disney, I don't think it's as black and white as what a lot of people say it is. I think it has to do with the dynamics of the families that are going. People with younger kids are going to gravitate to Disney because it provides a more kid-oriented, kid-friendly experience in a lot of ways for kids that age. Like 5 and 6 year olds aren't going to be as big into Universal Monsters or Fantastic Beasts. That they're kind of targeting that more of that millennial, Gen X, Gen Z market from the books and things like that.
I guess from a logistics point of view as well, it's going to be easier for folk with younger kids just to go to one place because they can do everything they need to under one roof.
Well, and I think, and Disney's also taken strides that they've always been that kind of park. Like, well, there's not enough like flashy roller coasters and things like that. And that's why they've built like the new Guardians of the Galaxy coaster, which I'm sure you've heard people like our friends Brittany and Boo talk about it.
Yeah.
That's the most insane thing I've ever ridden in my life. It's crazy. So they're fleshing that out, but they're not going to be a Six Flags competitor or some of these Islands of Adventure competitors. But they are building out more experiences that I think is what Universal is really struggling with. Like, so the Epcot park in Florida, the one with the big golf ball, the big golf ball spaceship Earth thing. I think 90% of their visitors are there usually for a festival, whether it's International Food and Wine, the Flower Festival, where they always have all these food booths out. You can go and you can just eat until your heart's content. You can drink around the world and just get absolutely obliterated. And there's all these more adult experience, food, drinking, cultural activities, mixed with a little bit of rides. And I think that's what's balances some of that like kid nature of like the Magic Kingdom and things like that. And so all of that to say, I think this new park is beneficial to everybody except for Six Flags and SeaWorld and things like that, because it's adding capacity. It's bringing more people to Florida. It's going to bring more people to Universal, help flesh out their offerings, especially since the whole Marvel thing kind of gutted it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And
I guess from a media point of view, it will also help them identify who they are going forward as well. I mean, if they can use that marketing intelligence of who's coming through the door and what they're gravitating to, that'll probably help their production side as well, I guess. I don't know.
Well, they're not going to be seen as this like Disney chaser anymore. It's like, oh, they're kind of like the almost Disney, but like it's kind of not as cohesive and not as not as much polish. And in some ways, it's a more affordable option too. And so, like, the bigger that park gets, the more availability and hopefully drive prices down, make it more competitive, because Disney was running away with it there for a while.
Yeah.
There, if I have any hope or wish from this, I'm hoping that this does light a little bit of a fire underneath Disney, because especially Disney World, there is a troubling trend in my eyes with a huge focus on what they call the Disney Vacation Club, um, which is, there's nothing that I despise more about the Disney company than that. Like, I'm a pretty pro Disney person, but the Disney Vacation Club is the biggest, like, timeshare scam, and they're converting so much of their stuff. There's so much of their nice hotels, exclusive experiences, to this kind of timeshare experience of like, oh, you pay all this money
All
and you can
right.
stay in these
Okay.
special hotels, you can do these special things. And it's like, I don't like the pay to play aspect. I think it's okay with some of the ride experiences. Like, hey, I'm on a short time window and I really want to ride Rise of Skywalker. It's very important to me. I'm willing to pay $10 a person in my party to guarantee to get on this because I have one day. That, I think, is okay, because we don't
Yeah.
all have 4 hours to wait in line. We don't all, time is limited. It's not necessarily fair, but it's, it can make or break your trip if you have a limited amount of time. There's something you really, really want to do.
Yeah.
But this timeshare Disney Vacation Club stuff, I think, is getting out of hand, and I'm hoping this Universal poll does maybe scare them a little bit and maybe focus more on the everyday individual, and not the people who are willing to commit an astronomical amount of money to uh, non-ownership of a hotel room and,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
stuff like that.
they're supposedly making dreams, right? And that needs to be accessible to relatively everyone, or
No,
hopefully everyone. No, mate, that is so awesome, and I could talk about this for hours, but we have to be strict with ourselves. And I reckon, if I was a betting man, which occasionally I am, I think we'll be revisiting this again, because I need to know so much about Galaxy's Edge. And quite frankly, we're not going to fit that in for today, because I am fascinated, and hearing of friends of ours that saw only a few years back, the real life scale Millennium Falcon in real life, and it's something that I friggin' dream of. In fact, I could probably forego the rides just to stand there and look at
it's
that
pretty cool.
beautiful thing in real life. But we'll save that for another day. Thank you so much for this insight. I honestly, I find it fascinating, and I'm in awe of all of the experiences and the knowledge that you've been able to have on this kind of subject. But let's save the rest for another week, shall we? Buddy, thank you so much for your time again tonight, and I keep thanking you every week. But honestly, especially at times like this at the moment, this really is my little oasis of fun, and gets me away from real life. And I really do appreciate the time that you spend on this with me. It's good fun every single week. Thank you.
Likewise.
So where can people find us, Sean?
You can find me on our website, justchillin.com. That's where I am.
I'll be there as well. I'm with him. I'm not going anywhere. I'm with him. He makes me look good.
Yeah. Ooh.
All right, guys. Thank you again. We'll speak to you next week. Look after each other. Take care.
Bye.